ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. We have some seats at the front. If you would like, and you have a ticket to be at this event, we have some seats at the front. We'd like some folks to please go. We have some seats up here before we get started. A couple seats in between, please. Don't be shy. It's an interactive crowd. We don't judge if you get back up and want to go grab a tasty beverage. It's all good. Absolutely, just want to make sure. Well, good evening and welcome to What's Brewing, a fantastic program I feel honored to be a part of, put on by the Ben Chamber and our fantastic Advocacy Council. How about a round of applause to all of them? I appreciate all of you being here. Obviously, tonight's topic is one that hit home harder than we maybe could have ever thought by tonight. In fact, it even has some breaking news. We might find out even while we're here. We expect tonight's Q&A portion, as you know, that comes with this somewhat town hall style forum, to certainly be civil, professional, and engaged. Be mindful when Scott or I come to you with the microphones of grandstanding versus asking your question and engaging us. Sincerely. Got a little experience of doing this. I know how to put the cane around you. I even ask the same on my panelists. So, but you're here, and we want to have the conversation, and there's greater ones happening. I want to remind you that these are also recorded this evening. We'll put them up on our YouTube channel that we have out there for you. There's a lot of interaction I see on social media taking place as well. And I can see some news is in the room, and I believe the Bulletin and other reporters, so you'll have plenty of ways to follow up. Tonight, our subject, integration in our Central Oregon economy. Really what we're here about is honing this down to how this relates to us in this room. That's what we have right now together, is each other here in Central Oregon. Let's focus on that tonight. This is a really huge subject, as you know. Beyond what we can even cover in this room. We've got a limited amount of time. Let's make the most use of it. Would you agree? Agree? Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm Jamie Christman. I'm the EVP of Community Affairs at the Chamber. I'm also the honored person to be with Leadership Ben. How about some hands and a shout out to Leadership Ben in the room? So that's fantastic. I'd like to give a big thank you, of course, to Deschutes Brewery for being a great partner to us here, and your team is outstanding. A big round of applause to them. They really won it around for us all. I'd like to thank our title sponsor, Miller Lumber and SunWest Builders. They have been why we're able to bring these What's Brewing forums to you monthly at a reasonable time and place and rate, and still provide you with a tasty beverage as well. So thank you to them. Lots of partners out there. I'd like to remind you, each one of you in your agendas tonight have a nomination for our upcoming Women of the Year. And I hope you know of a fantastic woman, entrepreneur, community-minded, lifetime achiever, young adult you'd like to nominate, because the deadline's Friday. So
Jamie Christman.
Yeah, let's do that. Get her in. Long and short, there's that. So please, isn't that a wonderful thing to think about beyond just the subject we're covering tonight? Also, there's surveys in there. Thank you, Mr. Assessor, for holding yours up high for everybody to see. Fill those out. Turn it in the back. We hear you. We take a look at these. We look at them for subject matter that counts for you. We utilize them, so please fill them out, write your notes, turn it in at the back. We really are just pleased to have you here. So with that, I also would like to let you know, follow us on our new radio show, On Tap with the Ben Chamber. You can check it out bright and early, 7:30 in the morning. I know, you're all up, hanging out, having your coffee or your mimosas on all the Horizon Broadcasting Group stations, or you can check it out online at the Ben Chamber as well. A couple of these gentlemen here joined us in our last one. We'll have those Sundays at 7:30, or again, find them online. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. Next month, join us on March 14th for UGB. What's next? I think we have a few things going on in our urban growth boundary. Is it impacting how you're living? Is it impacting where you're getting to and from? What is really next for you out there? What's being planned, and how do you plan to get involved? So join us for that. We have many more topics ahead. Joining me as a moderator tonight, Mr. Scott Ramsay, who's on our Advocacy Council and on our Legislative Committee. So thank you and a big welcome to Scott. Yes, I know he does a great job. Really thinks out there for us. Our board members that are in the room and our own teams, thank you for being here tonight as well. But the men who are the people who are putting themselves on the line here with us tonight, front and center, let me welcome as our, I know, well, you know, I always get the question, why aren't there women on the panel? And I'm like, I love women on the panel. That's not the issue here. So joining us tonight, a business owner and a man who sees himself as involved and just quite strictly the opinionated businessman in the room. But he comes with a lot of solid information. Preston Callicott from 5 Talent Software. You already know the executive director doing great work out there from the Latino Community Association. I see his compassion, experience, knowledge, and drive work with a great number in this community, not only the Latino community, but beyond. And please welcome Brad Porterfield. And many of you know, and if you don't, it's a great person to get to know, has a long history like, oh, yeah, all of us have ancestry and immigration in his own family, but an immigration attorney here locally, joining us with a great wealth of experience and knowledge. And if you'd like to follow up, because the man has a lot of info, please welcome Dan Larsson. So with that, I want to go ahead and kick it off. We're going to kind of set the stage real briefly. Preston has agreed. You know, we joked about him being the opinionated businessman in the room. However, it's partly because he understands there's a way that we all would like to relate and be the average person of how we see this, how it relates to us, and how we can truly discuss it. So, Preston, thank you for your kindness, and we'll let you kick it off, and the mic's right there to your left.
Is it live? Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out. Just a little intimidating to see a gigantic crowd. Wow. Talk about an issue that draws everyone. Well, I think along with Brad and Dan, the reason we're here is that we're very passionate about the subject, and I'm sure that's why everyone is here. This is a subject that tops the charts for interest, and it is probably touches everything: morals, ethics, law, business, you name it. So it's so broad and deep, we can only touch on a few, and what's happening right now in the moment. Literally, we might find out in the 9th district whether the ban goes into effect or not any moment. So we're keeping an eye on that.
Yeah.
So quickly, the reason why I'm at this table, besides the fact that I'm a loudmouth opinionated guy, is
hold that mic closer so we can really hear those.
I'm here for several reasons. One, I'm passionate about my community, and as an Army brat who traveled the world, I didn't have one until I landed in Bend 13 years ago. So from all that absence, I'm probably now on the other end of it. Just extremely passionate about everything that's affecting Bend. The other part is, although my name doesn't show it, I'm half Colombian. So I sit here with that part of it, and also the experience of someone who's sat in many conversations with folks that didn't know that said many things that still shock me to this day. So that's another reason I'm at the table. And to sort of frame this, hopefully the discussion goes towards, we can't control what's going on in Washington. You can yell and scream at your representatives, but I want to focus local. I think we all do. No matter what happens, how do we respond in Bend, in Central Oregon? Whether it means, does Bend create a sanctuary city? Do we, if the policies go through, do we compassionately provide services as people have to exit? Do we rally and fight? What's going to happen? So, and we'll carry that conversation with, obviously with Brad on the Latino community, and in Central Oregon, that's about 95% of anyone that's not white, right? Yeah, with me as a coach. So with that, how do you want us to go forward? Do you want us to jump into Q&A or?
Nope, no, we'll see that up. Go ahead and we'll have Brad say his piece. So round of applause, Preston, teeing it up.
I'll follow Preston's lead and talk about why I'm here. So I am the Executive Director for the Latino Community Association, which is Central Oregon's only nonprofit focused on empowering our Latino families. But I think what really connects me to the issue and to the people is just experience living abroad, experience growing up in Southern California, but also living in Mexico, Uruguay, and Thailand, traveling, and working with Latinos here in the United States for about 20 years. So the future, well actually, I wanted to do a poll. How many people in the room have lived abroad? Raise your hand. Lots of people. Awesome. That also explains why you're here. I'm guessing you understand the issue better than most. If you've lived abroad, it gives you a unique perspective, I believe, both on what life is like abroad in different countries and different cultures, and then coming back here, gives you a whole different perspective on what life is like here with different groups of people. So it gives you awareness and empathy and understanding. So the future, there's a statistic by the U.S. Department of Labor that says of all the new people entering our workforce in the United States between now and 2050, 80% will be Latino.
Will be what?
Latino. Latin American. That's a pretty amazing statistic, I think. And so that's the future. And yet we seem to, and it's not just Latinos, we're going to have more other immigrants as well, but that's a big percentage of our immigrant community, and especially in our workforce, and especially in our service workforce. And I think we're ignoring that fact. I think we're in denial. And it worries me. I sit on our workforce investment board also here in Central Oregon, East Cascade Workforce Board. And it's a huge issue for me, and it's pretty apparent to me that it's not as big of an issue for others. It's not as front and center for businesses necessarily, and for other folks that are working in workforce development and economic development. So that's another reason why I'm here. And we need to pay attention, and we need to prepare ourselves, and we need to build our skill set so that we can incorporate immigrants into our workforce better. We need to do a better job. The immigrant families that we serve at the Latino Community Association, 94% earn less than $30,000 a year, 77% earn less than $20,000 a year. They're really hardworking people, but earning very little and receiving very few benefits. For most people, there's a lot of myths out there about immigration that, in particular, undocumented immigrants, unauthorized immigrants receive benefits, and they're just taking advantage of that. And the truth is, they are ineligible for all federal benefits. For no unemployment, no food stamps, no tax credits for the filing taxes, no earned income tax credit. So they don't get the same benefits as other low-income families to help them and lift them up. And that's just, obviously not all Latinos and not all immigrants are low income, but that's the reason. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand. That's not what the media tells us necessarily. Here in Central Oregon, we have about 20,000 Latinos, and like Preston said, Latinos make up about 98% of immigrants in Central Oregon. There's not a huge diversity in terms of number. There are many other sprinklings. Is anybody here an immigrant? Got a few. Right here. But the majority here in Central Oregon are Latino, and the majority of Latinos are from Mexico. The next biggest group is El Salvador. But there's also Chinese families, there's also where are you from? Canada. There's also Canadians. We do our Festival of Cultures every year in Redmond in September, and we have, I think the most, we had 19 people from 14 different countries take their citizenship. Oath of citizenship at the festival. You just don't know. You don't know until you know. And who's an immigrant, who's not, what their status is, what it isn't. So we need to be paying attention. I'm glad everybody's here because I'm glad that immigration is front and center in the news. I'm not happy about the way it came to be, and all the ugliness, a lot of the ugliness that surrounds, what's on the news, what's in the media, but it's important and we need to face it. We need to do something about it. We need to stop ignoring it, kicking the can down the road. And that's Congress's job, and that's our job, essentially. It's our job to tell our Congress people, our representatives, that the time is now, we need to fix our system. Dan is the lawyer, he'll tell you about our broken system, why it's not working. So I think I'll stop with that.
Okay.
Pass it on.
And he's got a mic there. Let's try this new one in case the muffling isn't so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, my name is Dan Larsson, and I have, from Sweden originally, and I've been practicing for about 23 years now as an immigration attorney. So the first thing that I would like to ask is, how many people here are designated as Native American? Only one. Okay, that's not very many. So most everybody here is an immigrant, not too far. Now, how many people here in this crowd know that you do not need a social security number to be legal to work in the United States? That you don't need a social security number to be legal to work in the United States. Most people don't know that, right? Okay. So, number one, this is a country that was built on immigration. And we also have an immigration system that is very, very complicated, that is very misunderstood, and that has now come under attack for various different reasons. And I was listening this afternoon to the oral arguments at the Ninth Circuit on this travel ban. Some may call it a Muslim ban, but let's not get into that too much. But the bottom line is that we now have an administration that is really putting immigration front and center. So the implications of this are, there's a multitude of implications about this. Number one, we have people in the country that are now scared. We have people who are trying to get into the country who are having problems. I have had calls from Sweden, from people who were refugees 30-some years ago from Iraq. They now have Swedish citizenship, and they're worried about coming to the United States. And these are business people that are traveling in and out to the United States for years and years. As a matter of fact, I had a chance here to speak Swedish tonight with Tom. He came up and he started speaking Swedish, so that was kind of nice. But you know, the point is that you can't really tell who is an immigrant from just looking at somebody. They may be Latino, but they were born in the United States. They may be first-generation immigrant, and they look like everybody else, but they're not born in the United States. So one of the biggest issues that we're facing right now is that the immediate problem that we have is really an attack on the country as most people have known it for the longest time. And the short-term implications are protests and attorneys and people getting involved around the country. We've been filing lawsuits. We were able to, when I say we, but immigration attorneys, have been able to at least put a temporary halt to this travel ban. But there were several executive orders that were issued, and we are expecting the possibility of mass immigration raids. Again, what does an immigrant look like? It's difficult to say. So it creates a whole it's fearful for a lot of people. And the long-term implications, as a matter of fact, I have somebody that I've known for over 30 years, I was a foreign student at the University of Oregon, and my friend Paul was in charge of international student programs. Now, foreign students have come here for many, many years. They've become entrepreneurs. Some have gone back, but it's a huge, big problem. So when you're talking about immigration, you're not just talking about your farm workers, your Latinos. You're talking about the whole world, and it is a big, big issue and a big, big problem that we have right now. So I think Central Oregon will be impacted directly perhaps, but also indirectly, as you have people who want to come and visit the United States and want to go, for example, to my backyard and ski. They're going to think twice. And those are big issues that we're going to have to deal with.
Thank you all for setting that up. Just going back to really nailing this down to Central Oregon. Who here in Central Oregon, we touched on in our press release and all our marketing, tech, agriculture, and tourism. You're nodding your heads. Is that who in Central Oregon that this reaches in that particular arena right now when it affects our economy, our workforce, and the people who are truly being impacted here in Central Oregon?
Well, out of those, agriculture by far, right? Farmers, ranchers, etc. Tech to less extent. We don't have a whole lot of H-1B people here.
Do you want to say what that is real quickly?
It's a visa towards for a certain group of people who have experience that we want to hire. So it's that, for example, Google, right, has a whole group of H-1Bs.
Right.
And the misconception is that we're replacing the American with that job. The reason why we have them is because we don't have enough. There aren't enough masters and PhDs in various categories, so we have to go out of the country to get that. And it's at most, the total number of H-1Bs is 85,000?
85.
Right, so for the entire US, 85,000.
And
So we're not talking, 800,000. It's a very small number, but it gets a lot of focus. And they're trying to force a doubling of the minimum salary to $130,000 to $150,000 in order to encourage employers to look local. Well, we are looking local. They aren't here. So we have to go to India and other places that are creating this talent that we need to hire. So, tech to a lesser extent here in Central Oregon, but I'll argue that all of us, all the businesses are getting impacted. When we start hauling people away from fast food, from ag, from cleaning services, and everything else that these hardworking laborers do, we're all going to be impacted. Business is going to suffer in general.
All right.
Yeah, if you were just to walk across Bend, restaurants, hotels, golf courses, people's homes, people's kids, people's elders, hospitals, clinics, you name it, there's immigrants working there.
Okay.
And then you get into authorized and unauthorized immigrants. Unauthorized are more lower wage service jobs. Authorized can access better jobs, better pay. So there's a division there based on your status, your immigration status, which is unfortunate. That's one of our biggest issues. We're really not. It's good for certain businesses because you get lower wages. You can, if you're the type of employer that just if you send somebody away because you know somebody else is in line, you take that space, that spot that's also an unauthorized immigrant, or maybe you don't know that, but they're an immigrant. You can tell they don't feel very empowered. Take advantage of it.
Okay.
And that goes on a lot.
Okay.
More than I'd like to admit.
All right. And that's another area we want to get into. But going back to another portion of that is the losses and the cuts, not only that we might face and how a business person handles their budget, but what about the entrepreneurs here who are immigrants? what's that look like? Because my understanding is we have a fairly decent number. And we've heard from some state officials that there are some Central Oregonian entrepreneurs here who perhaps really are concerned, very concerned, that are immigrants.
Entrepreneurs in Bend, you know, that's almost like the lifeblood now. What's happening, the energy that people feel is the entrepreneurship. And yes, I know at least a dozen that are immigrants. 42 out of the top 400 richest people in America are immigrants. And I would argue probably 2/3 of them are a second or third generation family of immigrants. So, but locally, yes, we would lose a lot of talent as far as startups, as far as workers. You know, we've been pulling people into Central Oregon with middle wage jobs. You know, we're replacing forestry and the mills with, you know, tech-related jobs in biotech, outdoor tech, software, etc. But I would argue that a good number of startups in the entire West, which I really feel is the home of startups, are, you know, from another country.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, and I actually have helped several people that have moved here from different countries and started businesses, and some of them are actually wanting to leave because they are so upset about the fact where the United States has been going. And it really is it really does hurt when you've been going through the system and you've gone through the process and you have people who really came here because of the opportunities that you have here in the United States for various different reasons that you don't have in most other places in the world. And to then feel that you're not welcome because of being Muslim, because of being Latino, because of these different things. It really hurts to the core, and that's, I think, what is very challenging, and that's really what we're going to have to somehow manage with what is going on, whether it's going to be it would sound bad, but whether it's going to be a white America or an inclusive America. That's really what it comes down to, which is very sad, in my opinion.
All right. So keeping us going in this direction where you're talking about the entrepreneurs leaving, one of the subject matters that you brought up in our discussions and I've been hearing about is ex-migration. Let's talk a little bit about that. Educate in the room those who haven't heard of it, and then update what that means here to those who have.
I don't have statistics, Dan, but we had a former board member move to Mexico with their mother because they couldn't afford to have their mother cared for here. Or it was much more affordable to have her cared for 24 hours a day in Mexico.
Okay.
So that's an example. There's just healthcare costs are so high here. That's one huge issue that we all face. And it's much cheaper than other countries. We got Thailand. I lived in Thailand. They have hospitals there that look like 5-star hotels. It's just, it blows your mind. And it's about, it's $500 to have a baby.
So would you say
Stay in the hospital
ex-migration?
for 4 nights. What's that?
I didn't even.
My son was born there.
So give a broad scope, you guys. What is the percentage of ex-migration? Why are we bringing it up? Those are case in point examples. But what's that really look like? How big is it? How much of it is really impacting us? What's really happening on a grand scale?
Sure. Well, the numbers are actually in reverse right now, and they have been for a while. We have more exiting than entering, and it's not because we have any new walls. It's partly economics. The bottom line is America needs workers, and it draws from other countries, legally or illegally, to fill those slots. And then when opportunities, when the market goes down, they flow back. And so there's been this natural flow across the borders based on our demand and their supply. Now the supply is on the other side. The demand's on the other side. So the economics across the border are better. there's less reasons to stick here. So there's been a natural migration over the border. So if we put a wall up, for example, we're actually exacerbating a problem. People who want to exit will have difficulty because if they have to go through the border, a lot of these people, when we say undocumented, a good portion of them have no documents.
Right.
Although I think, Brad, you think it might be better than that. But so that the tactic that a Mexican diplomat said a couple weeks ago is, well, you know, if they throw up the wall, we'll just ask for the same requirement that the U.S. does. Prove that you're Mexican. You know, you look like one, but that's not good enough. So, you know, where's your document? Which is the tactic that Syria is using with Europe, right? Saying, well, sorry, you got to prove that they're a Syrian. So what happens is, if we start pushing people to the border by force or by economics, and we put a wall up, there's going to be camps all along 3,000 miles of, you know, I don't know, millions, 11 million is the goal to shove out the door? Well, you know, the country's responses on the other side of the border is, well, prove it. Are you a Salvadoran? Show me the paperwork.
I think another problem that we're going to run into perhaps more and more is there's going to be retaliation from countries around the world about either banning people from coming in or enforcement inside the country, or even I know that there's been discussions about seizing funds by, for example, people from Mexico that are sending money down to a family down in Mexico. So I actually have a place down in Mexico and talk to people down there, and there's a growing feeling about, for example, let's buy goods that are made in Mexico instead of buying American. So you have Walmart, you have all these U.S. companies. So down the road, you're going to see an issue with U.S. goods not really selling around the world. You also have people who own properties and so forth and so on. So I think, again, countries have pride, and they're going to retaliate. If you slap a 20% tariff or a tax on Mexico, saying that we're gonna have to do that unless you pay for the wall, it's clear that it's the United States and the consumers that are gonna have to pay for that, because Mexico's not going to.
Interesting, okay. Keeping the ball rolling here, just kind of getting through the bullet point questions and allowing the audience to, you know, begin writing down your thoughts and your questions and the things you're ruminating on. But we touched a little bit ago on DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and that being pulled back, and H-1B visas, H-1B, yeah, visas, about 85,000 of those out there, of professionals pulling back. You indicated how that would affect the workforce. How in general is this going to affect our education and our education system as well? How's this going to affect education?
I would love to take this opportunity to introduce Gustavo, somebody I invited.
Scott can go over to Gustavo. Go ahead and say that, Scott.
If you're willing, Gustavo. So Gustavo holds a DACA permit, which is
Keep standing, honey, and Scott will help you here. Scott, you stay by and maybe hold the mic or something.
Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals is basically a permit, work permit, temporary work permit. It doesn't change immigration status. A temporary work permit for 2 years that is specifically for immigrants who came before the age of 15 to the United States. They came with their parents as children, grew up here, and they're between 15 and 30. So they have access, assuming they haven't committed any crimes, and there's definitely a vetting process, trust me, Gustavo can tell you. To get that permit. It's not that easy. It costs money and everything else, but I'd love Gustavo to share his story.
Yeah, so, Gustavo, hold the mic really close.
So, my name is Gustavo Belize.
A little closer. I mean it.
My name is Gustavo. I've been living here in Bend for 20 years.
You don't even look old enough to have lived here 20 years. Jealous already.
And And I mean, it's pretty intense, like the challenges that like we all have to deal with. So, like I said, I've been here for 20 years, and this has been a really crazy, like it's been really intense. Like, so I worked 2 jobs. I was a 4.0 student. Wanted to go to college. I didn't really know like what it was to not have the documents. You know, like I always just went to school. I wanted to have a career, and I got stuck working 2 jobs. Still to this day, I work 60 to 70 hours a week, helping out my family on top of me trying to make my own life, you know? And it's been hard. Right now with the whole like travel ban and all that, my grandma, she's really ill right now, and she's the one that raised me when my parents came to this country, and I'd like to see her, and I filed for the advance parole to be able to leave the country, and like I don't know, like if I get granted that permit, I don't know if I should take the chance to go see her, because I don't know if I'll be able to come back. And yeah, it's pretty crazy.
How old are you?
26.
Okay, so you were 6 years old when you came here.
Yeah.
Did you make that choice?
No.
So that's part of the issue here, is that we have, right now I think there's almost about 1 million DACA kids around the country, and there are those who have not applied for status as well.
Was this the one formerly we might have associated with the DREAM Act?
Well,
A little bit? Brad
somewhat.
says? Okay, I'm
Somewhat.
not gonna get off course, I just want
Right.
people to feel they can relate to this and hear it, so, okay.
So you have a class of people who came to the United States before the age of 16. That's the,
Right.
and you have to have either be in high school or graduated or in college, and you have to be under the age of 31 and not have disqualifying criminals convictions. So it's a fairly small and a narrow class of people, but we have children who came here who they're Americans, and they have been, many of them didn't even know that they were illegal until they graduated from high school, or when they try to get a driver's license and the parents have to say, you know, you have some problems here. And so it's really a big issue. It's a really big issue.
All right.
Yeah, like that was the case with me. Like when it really impacted me, like I was a senior in high school, and I was like offered to get a scholarship to go to Gonzaga, this and that, and then I was told, no, you can't apply for it. You don't have a legal status, you know. So it was hard.
Thank you for sharing. Courts might be backlogged from a lack of what really to do here. I see, Preston, you can check in your phone to see what updates we might get tonight.
I haven't seen anything yet. Still waiting.
Judge Alta Brady couldn't join us this evening. However, she was going to bring that to a local level. What kind of backlog might we see, and how will that? The other question is, you talked about not only them putting up and asking for papers to prove that you're documented going back, Mexico or any place. What floored me in a conversation with you were detention centers that are for profit. How many of you knew that? Okay, right? The choir knew that. share briefly what that means, what that is.
Try mine, yours is muffled.
It's fine, I think.
Is it?
Is it okay? Can you hear me?
Can you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just have to hold it closer.
Okay. I thought this was a tone.
Yeah, so there's, I don't know how many, but there's really only two major corporations that are running immigrant detention centers along the southern border primarily. And they even have quotas as part of their contract with the governments. That's the part that bothers me. So you need to we'll build this prison, we'll staff this prison, we'll run this prison, but you gotta have at least this many people in our detention center, otherwise we can't turn a profit. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's just me, that's my opinion. And the Trump administration's orders are to basically fill those detention centers, and I'm not saying it's because of they want to enrich those companies, I don't know that, but nonetheless, it's put people in more quickly, limit their due process is what I understand from what I read. At least Dan can probably comment on that, if that's what I kind of took from it. Process them quickly, get them back to their countries. So anyways, there's people enriching themselves, corporations enriching themselves in the system. I don't think we ought to have private prisons, but that's just me.
Some food for thought out there we need to consider when we're having this conversation. So we'll get to the Q&A just a little bit. Greg, I do know we have the DA in the room, John Hummel, who's joined us this evening. Wanted to ask you a little bit, and I know our Sheriff, Shane Nelson, is here with us as well. You know, a lot of talk, and Oregon's in a bit of a position here. Can you talk a little bit about how the courts are going to look, Mr. Hummel, and then Sheriff Nelson, maybe a little bit about how it really looks out there for you in terms of whether we are or aren't a sanctuary city or a county, how you have to operate. And I'll start with John.
Hey everyone, I didn't prepare anything tonight. Thanks, Jamie. I'll get you that. Sheriff Nelson here, and former Bend Police Chief Andy Jordan is here. All three of us will tell you that in Oregon, we are prohibited from enforcing federal law. So the sheriff and his deputy, Bend Police officers, do not go out enforcing federal law. We're not rounding up immigrants at the behest of the federal government. I will tell you this, I've looked at the numbers. I've not seen that immigrants commit crimes at a higher rate than people who are not immigrants. In fact, what I see is that immigrants are more often victims of crime. And when they are victims, they are often reluctant to come forward and report their victimization because of a fear of being deported. So I give Sheriff and Chief Jordan, when he was chief, credit for instilling a spirit in their ranks that we are going to help every victim of a crime in Deschutes County. We are not going to have someone fear that if you are victimized and you come forward, there are going to be negative repercussions for that. So that's the culture we've built up over the past few decades. And my fear is that that culture will be changed if someone fears if they come forward, they could be deported. So you don't see it in your sheriff, in your current police chief, or in me. But that's discussed among immigrants. And when we do get an immigrant victim in our office, they talk to us, and when they build trust with us, they say that many of their friends and family members are afraid to come forward, and so they suffer in silence, particularly in sexual assaults and in thefts, in domestic violence cases. They're afraid to come forward, and so we, as a law enforcement community, need to continue the culture in Deschutes County that we're going to keep everyone safe, regardless of your status. I don't even want to know your status, and that's how we do it.
Thanks, Scott. Shane Nelson, your sheriff. I really can't say it much better than John. I will tell you that our priority is public safety. And I want anybody that needs sheriff's office services, because we are in the customer service business, that they call us. I don't want them to be worried about their status because, like John said, we don't enforce federal law. The nexus, I will let you know, for your sheriff's office, if someone comes into our custody in the jail, it does trigger a communication with ICE. But we don't enforce the laws, we don't enforce their rules, but we follow the rules. And it's just, it's a contact, we answer their questions, and that's it. We do not detain anywhere past what local charges would authorize for detention. So, that's all I have to say. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate you being here this evening. Dan, one of the conversations we had kind of teeing off that, what will Bend and other cities do? These two answered per se. Just real briefly, because I want to get us to another set of questions and then get out to the audience. Real briefly, you had said you're working with other attorneys, other cities, municipalities. What's really going on the nationwide level? What are we seeing around here?
Well, I think that, for example, this lawsuit against the travel ban is something that I'm a member of what is called the American Immigration Lawyers Association. And attorneys from ALA and other organizations have really started the band together. We've been doing this for a long time, but I think that in terms of seeing a movement of people getting ready to litigate for the possibility of going into federal courts, to file habeas petitions if somebody is detained, is something that I really haven't seen in the 20-some years that I've been practicing. And unfortunately, it appears that that may be the way you're going to have to resist and to file lawsuits to kind of clog up the courts, which is, at the end of the day, not a very good thing to do. But I've also dealt with this through 9/11, and I've seen, I have seen enforcement, and not all police officers are created equally. And I've seen a lot of people that were detained at some periods of time that because of their national origin. So I think that one of the things that we'll be seeing more and more is increased community action and lawyers doing what they feel that they need to do to protect people, at least give them the opportunity for a fair hearing. We have, for example, a proposal is one of the executive orders is to expand what is called expedited removal, which right now only applies to within 100 miles of the borders. But unless you can prove that you've been here for 2 years, you can be detained by immigration, and you would not have the right to counsel and no right for a hearing, and you can just be shipped out. And so that's a very potentially troubling aspect. And we have a proposal to add about 5,000 Border Patrol officers and another 10,000 officers in the interior, and the threat to withhold federal funding for and try to deputize state and local law enforcement. So it's going to be a very challenging time, I think, coming down the road.
Absolutely. So the final question on the bullet and everything that was put out, and it's even within the program here at your seats, will there be services of compassion and assistance for families and businesses who find themselves impacted negatively? And I know we've asked a couple other key guests, but I don't see the one that I was hoping could answer that directly. So can one of the three of you help us answer that?
Sure. Well, that's our mission. I mean, our mission is really to empower families, and when you're working with families that are in crisis, you're not exactly empowering them. You're helping them survive versus thrive. And that's something that we've been working on, kind of changing and making a shift toward away from survival to surviving to thriving. What is impossible with families in crisis. But that's our job. I mean, that's our mission, is to serve our Latino families and raise them up as best we can, and to partner with multiple community partners to help make that happen and strengthen our network of services that support families But having said that, there's still, you have to keep in mind, they're still not, the unauthorized folks are still not eligible for any safety net benefits, tax credits, you name it. No federal benefits. So they're very vulnerable. And I wanted to point out that it became very clear to me during the recession in 2008 to 2012, however you look at it. But during the time when we got down to one staff person, lots of volunteers fortunately, but many of our board members had to scramble in their own businesses, just make things work to survive essentially. And what I saw was our client families, hours were being cut. I mean, they're the first. They're the first workers to have their hours cut, their shifts changed. And our economy would not have survived nearly as well without them. Super clear to me. And I don't know if it's clear to the business owners or not, because a lot of business owners don't even realize that their workers are unauthorized immigrants. Because one thing in this country that drives me crazy, the hypocrisy, is if we wanted to fix our immigration system, we would have a secure Social Security card. Since that's the document we use for employment, even though Dan pointed out we don't need it, doesn't matter, that's what we use in practicality. You must have a Social Security card for the job. It's easy to get a fake Social Security card, really easy, and cheap. Come up with a secure Social Security card, you solve the problem. You don't need a wall. So I hesitate to say that, because if that's the only thing our government did, that would harm our immigrant families immeasurably. So we need to do that and many other things. Provide a path, permanent residency and citizenship for folks who've been here their whole lives. But that's really simple. So that tells me, I don't come to any conclusion, but it tells me that there must be higher forces that really don't want to fix our immigration system. And Congress keeps kicking it down the road, so that's pretty clear too. I don't know what those forces are, who the lobbyists are, but that's the easy fix. A secure Social Security card instead of a little piece of paper. It's really easy to get. So we depend on immigrant workers. Preston pointed that out. We're not, native-born Americans are not having enough kids to replace ourselves and to fill the jobs of a growing economy. That's biology, that's science, that's fact. So we need immigrants. We draw immigrants that,
8% of Ben, is that the right number? 8% of Ben is Hispanic. I don't know what the percentage is nationwide, but unless Trump now puts a law in place that says everyone must have 4.5 babies, we're not going to have the population to replace our workers. We're aging out. So immigration is the way that we flush the flush the country with people who create revenue for the country and for companies. So I see this as nothing but detrimental. We don't have the natural workforce birthing every year to replace our workers. So thank God for immigration. Thank God for illegal immigration, because a lot of those jobs, most of us wouldn't want to work anyway. They're pretty hard. And that's the one thing I want to bring up is getting back to the people, because we're talking about subjects that, I want to talk about, how many of you saw the Super Bowl ad, 84 lumber ad? Did you see it on YouTube and not on Super Bowl? How many of you? Because that's a totally different ad, by the way. The ad you saw on Super Bowl is they removed the wall. And if you haven't seen it, it's about a mother with a little girl who makes the journey, and it really gives you the sense of what kind of life experience this is to make that hazardous journey. And then the images, they come up to this wall. And of course, the good side of this for 84 Lumber is they created a door, right? So that's the ad, but that experience really tore at my heart. I mean, it's one thing to intellectualize this. It really gives the feeling of what people are willing to go through for a better life. And so when I hear about the word lazy, it just drives me nuts. It makes me want to get violent. Adversity creates, people who have extremely strong work ethic. They come here because they want to create a life, and life means living with a living wage, which they don't have where they come from. So to personalize it down, these are people and families seeking survival, and not just a better life, but survival to start, and then they can imagine a better life. So please, let's keep it personal. We're talking about 8%, so if we have, 90,000 people in Bend, that's 7,000 and change,
How many around the region?
8,000? Yeah, and 8,000 people in Bend, so we're talking about shipping out 8,000 people, or in this audience, that would be, a handful. That's crazy. It's crazy to me that we're gonna ship out the workforce that we need, because we don't like who they are, or they don't look like us, or they don't speak the same language.
Well, first I wanted to say that all in all, I've been so happy and blessed with working with in this community, and I've been here for 17 years now, and state and local law enforcement and the prosecutors, we've all been, compared to many other communities, this is a very good place. There's been some incidents, but all in all, it's a very welcoming place and a safe place for people. I guess I see it as a Swede a little bit more broadly than just looking at the Latino community, and that's just how I feel, because I came here as a foreign student back in 1979. I came back and went to college, and I was a foreign student in college, and eventually ended up going to law school. And I look at both the illegal immigration and the Latino community, which has been suffering greatly because of very crazy immigration laws, and there are people that have tried to do it the correct way, and they've had to wait for sometimes 20 years, and because of very complicated laws, they may not ever be able to get their status. In immigration law, you can, for example, have committed you can be deportable for stealing candy twice. That would be considered a crime involving moral turpitude.
For doing what? I couldn't hear you.
Stealing candy twice. Okay. Misdemeanors can be considered aggravated felonies. There are things that have been retroactive 20 years back, and now all of a sudden you're deportable, you didn't even know about it. And when you go through the criminal system, in immigration law, it's civil law, it's not criminal law. So it's not a crime to be in the country illegally unless you have been deported and you re-entered illegally. That would be a crime. But for those who are here illegally, that's a civil infraction. So when you, for example, get into immigration proceedings, you can get a lawyer, but there's no right. You can't get a public defender. You can't get any. You have to pay for it yourself. And immigration laws are some of the most complicated laws that out there. So one of the things that I see is you have really a bigger issue than just the immediate travel ban. It really right now is a question of who do we want to be as a country. This was a country that was founded on immigration, that needs immigration, but also it's been a beacon of hope for so many people. And it's been becoming a leader in the world because of innovation of people. And I fled Sweden, oh boy, worst place in the world. and so for different reasons, people come to the United States and they feel that this is a place where they can be who they want to be, and they have the opportunities, and that is really one of the biggest issues that I think that we're dealing with right now.
So thank you, Taylor. I think now you see there's obviously a lot of diversification in how businesses, families, immigrants, people who, of course, in every walk of life around here feel about this, deal with it, and want to talk about it. So we're going into our Q&A portion. It's the one with you here in the room. Again, I remind you, I really want to hear your most concise and direct question as possible. we don't have as much time as we normally do, but I know we can all follow up in our conversations. This is intended to kick that off and allow you that opportunity. So I know there's a few people in the room who'd like to ask something to the panelists, perhaps put it out to the room.
I have one back here.
Exactly.
Thank you. I'm Phil Chang. I'm part of the staff for Senator Jeff Murray here in Central Oregon.
Thanks for being here, Phil.
Brad rightly pointed the finger at Congress a couple of times and questioned the role. And I wanted to provide a little bit of recent legislative history so that people can understand when they say, oh, the source of all the problems that we heard about tonight are because we have a broken and incomplete federal immigration policy. Why is that? The U.S. Senate actually passed a comprehensive immigration reform bill in 2012. The President of the United States waited for about 500 days for the House to pick up a comparable bill and send it to his desk to sign, and it never came. And that is why we have all of these executive actions that people are concerned about going away, like the DACA program, which can be done away with by the stroke of the pen by the next president. And so the root problem is that Congress does need to act, and it does need to pass a comprehensive immigration reform bill. But I just wanted to say that it's not the Senate's fault.
All right, Phil. Other questions in the room that you've been waiting to ask the panelists or ask some of our key guests per se. So real quickly.
Okay, so for me, what I would like to know is what can we do individually? Because you guys have a place in Bend and you're very connected to the community and you have a role, but individually, I think the people that are here, at least I am, wondering how can I get involved? What can I do to support Latino community and just make it the Bend that we want it to be?
Make it the Bend. Really localizing it personally and here. Okay.
Vote.
Vote.
Look, the one thing that this election has caused is a dramatic increase in attention from everyone. We're talking about, people are activated everywhere on both sides, right? I mean, the election was won because one side was more activated than the other. So vote. Number one, vote, call your representatives and yell and scream and shout, show up at Salem, make your voice heard. That's, I would say, how an individual can really impact. I mean, they are listening to these surveys and opinions. I don't know if you've seen all the social media about contacting, but they're gathering and taking polls of people yes and no. It's basically all you have to do is call and say yes and no on an issue. They don't listen to anything else. They're just trying to count what side of the fence you're on. Call and state it.
Call what?
We have we can get you a whole roster of all the representatives, whether it's state or local or Fed, right? I mean, and we want all of them, local, state, and federal, to hear us.
So that might be.
Well, we'll want to make sure you have the mic if you do follow up. And then you can go to the Bend Chamber's website. We list all that, and then there's links out that go even deeper. BendChamber.org.
I think the action item would be then to, so I'm thinking, what can I do individually? So I could come up with a list and share it somehow with the community so that, because people are asking, who should I call? What's the number? And when should I do that? So individually, I could do that. That's something that I can do. Come up with a list and share it with everybody.
She's asking you.
Yes. Jamie, can we, our board member Greg Delgado's here, he's a community organizer, he'll have lots to say on this.
And then I have a question over here.
Hi, I just wanted to say for you, thank you for stepping up, that's important. Right now, there's tons of stuff happening right now. People like Indivisible and a lot of community groups are doing this. It's important that our legislatures, good and bad, hear from us every day, all the time on every issue. The Latino issue is one thing, but the issue of where our country is going is bigger. So we have to make sure that we all take that step. We just organized a rally against Walden across the street. It's happening just at 5 o'clock it started. So this is a community effort, and there's a lot of places to jump in. You can get online, you can look at this, but all of us have to put our voice to this issue and to all the issues that are important to us. The democracy belongs to us, and we need to make sure that we have that voice. Do you have a question over here?
Any questions? Yeah, my name's Erin. I really appreciate what District Attorney Hummel had to say, as well as Sheriff Nelson, about victims of crime, essentially. I mean, other than sort of being civically engaged and being active and voting in our community, I'm concerned that when we talk about vulnerable populations that are already living in the shadows, the damage is already done, right? I mean, this is what they're seeing in the media every day. So to encourage people to be able to come forward who are vulnerable, whether it's they need a food box, whether it's they need funds for school, whether it's they need shelter from domestic violence, what are we going to do? Kind of goes along the lines of your great question up front there. What are we going to do as a community to actively mitigate that, right? Because it's beyond kind of voting at this point. People are already sort of in the shadows. So I'm curious for the panelists and maybe anyone else in the community, what are we going to do to mitigate that over these next 4+ years?
Here's an answer back here.
Hi. So I would appreciate, my name is Amanda Gao. I run nonprofit organizations that work with vulnerable youth and marginalized populations, and I would say that there are a ton of agencies in your community right now that are doing this work, that are incredibly boots on the ground. Like, I work with survivors of human trafficking and Latino families and run Latino mentoring programs. So, and we're 100% donor funded. So, and I know that Brad's agency is doing a ton of work with these populations of people. So I would encourage you to get involved, volunteer, donate your time, your money, and lend your voice to these missions that are already in place. We don't need to recreate the wheel. Like there are organizations in Bend that are doing amazing work.
What's your organization? I run JBR Dating Services.
JBRJ, so Cascade Youth and Family Center, Big Brothers Big Sisters.
I'd just like to add that yesterday I met with I can't really say who it was with, but it was local organization or government that feels strongly about the community and would like to do what they can to assist. Now, some of the things that are happening around the country is that there's legislation and things being introduced. For example, in Ohio, they're looking at introducing legislation that would actually make it a crime, and city officials could be sued for providing services to illegal immigrants. There was legislation that I believe is going to be introduced by a couple of representatives in Congress that would actually cut legal immigration in half. So right now, the whole entire immigration system is under attack. And so we really have to get out there, talk to our representatives, get involved. I know that I became part of a Facebook group the day after the election, and after about 2 days, we had about 150,000 lawyers around the country that all want to get involved. Now, I think being on Facebook and talking about it is great, but it doesn't necessarily solve the problem. So I think that for people to actually call the representatives, get out there, protests, we're fighting lawsuits, whatever it takes. And again, I don't think it's a question of what it's the left against the right, or what's right or what's wrong. That's not the right way to do it. But it's the process that needs to be followed, and for people to really start listening to each other. And I think that when you have barely 50% of the eligible population in the country voting, and the Democrats winning the popular vote, yet they still lost the election, I do believe that this has really created a wave of people feeling that they really do need to care and be involved, or things may not end up as they would hope.
We have a question back here.
Hi, my name is Paul Primack, and I worked in international education before I retired. I worked for 35 years in the state of Oregon. And one of the, by the way, I'm a second generation immigrant and a military brat. So
You're gonna have to hold that closer.
Okay. So the point I'd like to make is that one of Central Oregon's growing economic drivers is going to be higher education. And that was not mentioned earlier, and if we have an immigration policy that discriminates against international students coming here, no matter what color, what country, whatever, you're going to see that drop off. And right now, I think Oregon's international student population across the public and private systems is probably about 10%. So I hope you keep that in mind too.
Well, I know the three of you, one of you three can answer it, and I see you have that Preston, but Christine, I'm putting you a little bit on the spot. You're here from OSU Cascades. I know it was even, at one time, a portion of the strategic planning. If you would like to respond to that?
Sure.
Okay. Scott and I are switching.
Sorry about
that. You should be.
Didn't know where you were going with that.
Thanks, Jamie. I'm Director of Communications at Oregon State's campus here in Bend, and we do think about international students, and we already do have a couple of them. This morning I was talking with one of our energy systems engineering majors who's here from China purposefully to study that degree program. We also have students from Kazakhstan who are right now studying that same degree. So degree programs attract students from around the country and around the world. And also research programs, as we build those out, they're going to attract people from around the country and around the world. We have had a senior researcher from China who just left fairly recently. International students are a big piece of, or well, a small piece of our enrollment picture. We know that international students, they bring diversity of opinions, diversity of points of view, and they can really add to the classroom. So there's an intentional strategy to also recruit students from abroad for that reason. So Oregon State University's president, Ed Ray, has come out and called OSU a sanctuary university, which is very similar to what the sheriff said. You know, we're in the business of educating students. We're not in the business of policing. So he came out very strongly with that statement about a sanctuary university, and the Bend campus would be encompassed within that too.
Can I address, first off, Central Oregon has been at full employment. I don't know for how long, but we're at full employment. The country is...
Explain what full employment is real quickly.
It means every able-bodied person who wants a job has a job.
You'd be surprised. Okay.
Secondly, the country has recently statistically reached full employment, right? So full employment, and we're going to kick out people that are coming to the United States, which is a feeding ground for companies to hire in and keep them here. We're going to kick them out. It's ridiculous. I mean, from the business perspective, how many heard that this recent letter with 96 CEOs, major CEOs, going against this immigration ban? That has never happened before. We've had business folks rail against local and state, but we've never had them actually take a political position the way they have en masse. And that's the tip of the iceberg. I mean, business in general, these are not business-friendly moves that are being made right now. They're going to hit us for a long time. And already, I don't know if you've heard the news today, travel is off by, was it close to 6% now? All right, now so how does that translate? Well, businesses are not allowing their employees to travel overseas. And if you know, travel is almost a direct correlation to business. The more you go and meet clients, the more you're going to get business. And as soon as we stop traveling, that pipeline starts freezing up. They'll go elsewhere where people are more freely moving around. So this travel ban, which I laugh at that word, a travel ban, it actually is a national ban now, and then that translates to a religious ban. So, whatever fence you're on, it just seems ridiculous that we're talking about a travel ban.
All right. So coming back, we have another question in the audience here.
Mine's not so much a question. My name is Andy Jordan, and I was chief of police here for quite a long time. But I had a long career in law enforcement, and it started in California. And when I first started, I'll give you my age almost, in the early 70s. In those days, Border Patrol, as it was called then, it's now ISIS, would roll into a community such as Fresno County or Santa Barbara County, where I worked for a sheriff's office in both counties. And they would do roundups. And local law enforcement participated in those roundups, so I saw firsthand the impacts on local businesses. And here's the scenario. Small town, a lot of people probably heard of Solvang. Solvang, California is a small tourist Danish town where a lot of Hispanics live and work. Their families, been there for a long time. Border Patrol would roll into an apartment complex and round up people. The impact was the next morning, businesses had no employees to go to work. They also, when the federal government rolled into town, left behind not only businesses without employees, but they left behind pieces of families. So dad, mom get rolled up by Border Patrol, deported, leaving behind their 5, 6, 10-year-old kids. It happened often. Local communities were then left to pick up the mess. And if you don't think for a moment that that's not the direction we're headed, then you're not paying attention. When we start talking about hiring thousands of ISIS, Border Patrol, whatever you want to call them, this is what the impact is going to be. And they'll come to Bend, they'll go to Portland, they'll go to Salem, and they'll do these kinds of things. And local law enforcement, if they get swooped up in this business of picking up undocumented immigrants, the impact to your businesses, the impact to our community are going to be very large. Also, one other comment, somebody asked a question about what we can do locally. This goes without saying, but we have to go back to the premise that everyone is a human being, and whether you're involved in the enforcement of laws or whatever you're doing, you've got to treat people right. You've got to treat your neighbors with respect. Doesn't matter where they're from, what color their skin is.
I have a question back here.
Hi, my name's Tia. Thanks for being here. We've talked a little bit about the different ways that we can help, and those have been very helpful and informative. I'm curious specifically, I think maybe this question is mostly for you, Brad, about the word empowerment that you used a few times with regard to the population you work with. And it sounds like there's this surviving piece that happens. But I'm curious about how, as a community, we can contribute to the empowerment part of that, whether that happens along the way or later on, in light of some of the comments that have been made about how we envision our community and what we like it to be like, and how do we make ourselves not just an advocate in the privacy of our home, but how do we sacrifice our time and our friendship and our love for those people so that we can offer them opportunities for empowerment. So I'm curious what that looks like to you from your organization standpoint.
Yes. One of the most powerful programs we run is our volunteer English tutoring program. I don't know if there's anybody that really knows.
Say it again, your what?
Volunteer English tutoring program.
Volunteer English tutoring program.
We have about 80 volunteers right now who meet with the Latino adults, and there's a few that meet with youth, but most are adults, and it's basically just getting together and practicing English. And the main thing it does is it builds their confidence. So as soon as you get that practice, because they're used to, many are used to being with their family, being with the community, speaking Spanish most of the time. Their kids live in the English-speaking world, and then they come home to the Spanish-speaking world. But the parents tend to live primarily in the Spanish-speaking world, with the exception of maybe work or workplace. They might speak a little bit of English or be exposed to English. And so that's one of the most important things is building that confidence so that they open their mouths and get to a place where they're okay making mistakes. It's the hardest thing. How many people have learned a second language? Yeah, learned or tried to learn. It's really hard to get over that hump where you're willing to sound like a fool, but you got to open your mouth to ever improve. so to speak. So that's we welcome you to come become a volunteer. It's a very labor-intensive job coordinating that. That's one of our stressors. So those donations come in handy when we need staff to coordinate that, because it's the communication between the student and the tutor and problem solving and everything else. But that's a really big impact. There's also computer tutoring. We do a little bit of that, because our families really need to gain those computer skills, even though they're not too excited about it. But they need it to get better jobs. So that empowerment for us means, I mean, every human being has skills and talents and capacity to become what they want to be, and so that's where we start from, and then we just look for places where we can lift folks up to meet their goals.
Thank you, Brad. Well, in honoring the time, it's just a minute after 7. You've been a fantastic audience. I'll give you this. I don't believe everybody in this room agreed with everything that was said here tonight. I also believe, though, that we had a lot of people who put themselves out of their own homes and in these seats and in this room to listen to the conversation, be engaged with it, get questions answered, and maybe you have things you need to follow up on, maybe you have things that need to be shared with others so that we're all educated. I open you and welcome that and encourage that as follow-up amongst you. And I thank you all not only for being here, but I'd like to give our panelists a big round of applause. Hope to see you next month and in other forums.
Thank you.